Hello everybody, my name is James Williams. I'm Director of Programs with an organisation called the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. Now I appreciate many of you are regular viewers of our Thursday live webinars, but we never assume anything here because we always have new audiences and new people joining the MEF community. So the Mobile Ecosystem Forum, we've been around since the year 2000, about 22, 23 years now. And we have, as of today, 213 members. We had another company join today, which was excellent news. So we're growing rapidly. We have 6 main product areas across MEF. We are a neutral trade organization. And no matter the size of the company, everyone has the same representation and the same, ultimately, power here at MEF. And we are member-led. And I'm pleased to say that TOMIA, who are joining me today, are members of MEF. Now, no matter where you are in the world, who you are, no matter whether we're talking about today or we go back 50 years, 100 years, or 1,000 years, when it comes to buying goods and services, there's little aspect of money or types of money. Everything ultimately, sadly in life, has a price. And if you are a supplier and you are selling things, then of course you want to be paid for your goods and services. So there is the whole area of invoicing. Now, of the 213 members within MEF as of today, approximately 2/3 have a very, very strong interest in the area of business messaging. Now, business messaging is a very wide area. It covers many, many channels. It encompasses SMS, voice is even in there, of course, with text-to-speech, chat apps, etc., etc. So business messaging is a very, very strong area within MEF. And it's safe to say that many of you watching this do come from that area. And today we're going to be talking about the whole area of price lists and invoice management for business messaging in particular. You're going to be hearing probably a couple of stories from me. I will obviously make sure any brands are nameless, but I'm sure some of the things you'll be hearing from me and the other speakers as well will resonate. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Jeevithan Muttu, who is the VP of Product and Research and Development with TOMIA. Jeevithan, a warm welcome. Hi.
Hi, James. Thank you for having us.
No, great that you could join us for the show, and also joined by Huang, who is a product manager with TOMIA. Hi, Harry.
Hey there, James. Great to be here. Thanks.
Good.
As well.
Fantastic. So if some of you are going to Messaging and SMS World next week in London, you'll be able to meet Jeevithan and TOMIA as well as myself. So I look forward to seeing some of you next week as well in person, in the real world. But today we are virtual. And we're talking about pricing and invoicing. But before we get into that, Jeevithan, would you like to just introduce yourself, what you were up to before TOMIA, because I'm sure there was a life before TOMIA, and also what do TOMIA do?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks again, James, for having us. So my name is Jeevithan Muttu. I'm the VP of Product and R&D at TOMIA Interconnect. TOMIA does a number of different businesses serving to operators. And aggregators. So on the interconnect and wholesale side of the things, we have been in the business for over 27 years now, doing everything from price list management to reading, routing, and billing of invoices. We also do network solutions on the roaming side, and we also have clearinghouse as well. About myself, before joining TOMIA, I was with another company of the parent organization called Incognito, where I was running the product and R&D team there as well, serving to carriers on the internet side of the world. Before that, I was working for a set-top box development on the video side of the business. So I've been in the telco space for quite some time now. And look forward to this webinar, giving you an insight into how we manage a price list and how we automate things. We'll also touch a little bit about the company background as we move forward. But yeah, thank you for having us, and great to be here.
Great stuff. And Harry, over to you. How have you been with TOMIA, and what were you doing before?
Ooh, that's a loaded question, James. But yes, it's been 10 plus years now.
In your career, sir. Yeah.
TOMIA has been my career. I'm what you would call a young dinosaur around here. So I came after college. I went to Penn State University, and then after college, I was looking around in that weird space of life where that was a time period where there was no such thing as a product manager yet. So we we're still figuring out what to do with the role, and somehow I walked into the interview, and they were just like, "That's a product manager, sure, we could do that." Since then, I've been working for TOMIA, and we've gone through a couple names since then. Mainly, I've been working a lot on the priceless side, the trading side. I put my foot in routing, also analytics, reporting. So at this point, I put my hands in every part of the cookie jar, but I haven't gotten caught yet.
Fantastic. Okay. Very good. So this is your career in telecoms and everything. This is your career. So this is your life, Harry. Fantastic. So Jeevithan, take it away. Let's roll.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you. So let's take a look at the agenda for today's session. We'll first take a look at the business messaging landscape, including A2P growth and operator deployment models. What are some of the challenges faced by mobile operators today in launching and expanding their A2P offers? Then we will dive into price list management and invoice management, covering expectations, challenges, and the need for automation. We'll touch on best practices and the use of right tools for tackling these issues, and then we'll do a final wrap up at the end of the session as well. As I mentioned, a little bit of background about ourselves. We have been in the industry now over 27 years. That's specifically in the interconnect / wholesale market. So you can imagine that we have seen all permutations of price lists out there and have built the capabilities to catch all sorts of errors and issues, right? We do have a strong global presence. We serve to 8 out of the 12 what we call Galaxy or multi-country operators, and 37 of the 40 largest operators by revenue. Our priceless and invoice exchange platform called the IX Link is used by over 4,000 operators, carriers, and aggregators. So it's not just for the tier ones, but our platform serves to all operators of all sizes. Aside from priceless management, we also do routing, rating, and billing of wholesale traffic. And that's where you see the 300 billion plus CDRs or EDRs being processed on an annual basis. And again, I'm strictly talking about within TOMIA, the interconnect part of the business. We do have roaming solutions as well as clearing. In the interconnect side, we do have a very strong A2P customer partnership. We work closely with aggregators and mobile operators, and our solutions have been well recognized in the industry. So that's just a little bit of background about ourselves. So coming to the topic, looking at the business messaging landscape, Harry, if you can advance, please.
Might be a little bit of a delay.
No, I can see it straight off. No problem.
Okay, very good. Looking at the business messaging landscape, well, we have a number of messaging channels. SMS by far continues to dominate the market. We're starting to see the traction back on RCS as well. We also have operators using our platform for RCS priceless management. From a growth perspective, A2P market is experiencing tremendous growth, and we see high potential with more enterprises and SMBs tapping into this channel for business communication. There are many analyst reports, as we are aware in MEF, available in on the A2P market, and all points to high growth and high market value. This is where we see operators tapping into A2P for additional revenue opportunities with bigger control and visibility. And I think that's the key, right? So the control and visibility into what they offer and for what rates and so on. So next, I want to take a look at the different deployment models that are available. So you can slice and dice this in multiple ways, but at least here, this is how we see it. At least you can slice this into 3 categories from a deployment option perspective that are available to operators today. And this has evolved and this continues to evolve. Number one is the fully outsourced model. So like before, operators are tapping into aggregators, utilizing third-party network and SMS hubs for services. So it's pretty much the hands-free approach. Option number two is similar to the first one. It's also outsourced model, but operators tend to have a separate priceless management. So that they have the ability to exchange and maintain price lists, which gives them the visibility and negotiation power as well. Option number three, this is where we see the integrated business operations model. This is if you have voice, so the voice plus SMS or just SMS, but it is the fully integrated model within the operator's network. This would include A2P direct sales to enterprises where operators are using services like price list distributions to actually send out price lists to the enterprises, and then they integrate to aggregators, but also other operators, not just for price list management, but also for routing and rating purposes as well. So it's the complete ownership with full control and visibility. So
Jeevithan and Harry, so all the mobile operators out there, there's still a good number of mobile operators that are really yet to understand the true magnitude of the A2P messaging opportunity. So we've still got a good number of operators to come on board. But the mobile operators you work with, of the three models you've outlined here, which one is the most common from what you've come across?
I would say it's split. The most common is still the option number one. As he said, right, it is still an evolution that's happening. That's what we see. But we do have a mix of all three actually, and we see people moving more towards the integrated or wanting to move towards the integrated model.
Okay, so you've got mobile operators that they understanding that, look, we've got a great strong brand. We're very good at person-to-person messaging, P2P. We don't really understand A2P, but let's bring in some guys who do understand it, for whom A2P is their lifeblood. So they partner with them and use them as their hub for the services. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. So Harry, if you don't mind going to the next one. Next, I want to talk about the complexities, right? So we'll talk about the advantages and how to address the complexities, but let's put the challenges first. The first challenge is the complexity and the margin impact. So this is about the ability to manage the complex A2P and P2P scenarios and the pricing models. This is enormous. Then is a lack of granular visibility into products and services that leads to shrinking margin as well. So this is in the event that you don't have full control. These are some of the challenges you're seeing. Priceless management, there is the overhead required to manage the creation, the generation, tracking of price lists. So we typically find it's a common occurrence across operators and aggregators to be handling anywhere from 30 to 400 or more distinct partner relationships. Each of these could be sending anywhere from 2 to 4 price lists per month, sometimes more. And within those price lists, you're looking at anywhere from 800 to 1,500 destinations. So you can see how quickly this adds up. And on top of that, when you add in origins and the variations in pricing, with the messaging, you have the ability to price based on submitted messages, or delivered messages as well. So it adds to the complexity, and you can see that skyrocketing quickly. Third aspect is data streamlining. So simple things as streamlining mobile country code and network code definitions from your suppliers against your local reference values. But with the volume of data, it gets complicated quickly as well, unless it's done right and automated. And in terms of automation, there's a significant effort, right, and time also spent in SMS-related data when things are not tackled properly. And we will, throughout this presentation, we'll actually get into the meat of this and where automation can help. but this is a challenge today if things are not done right. All of these actually lead to operational inefficiencies. And on top of that, if you're managing separate voice and SMS platforms, it is both expensive and also time consuming as well, right? So each system on its own requires dedicated hardware, software, and IT teams to manage them. So that will also add to operational inefficiencies. So these are at a high level, some core challenges. So what does this mean in terms of how does someone succeed in the A2P market? What drives success? Again, we would like to break it into three main categories or pillars. One is the visibility and control. This is a growing market, as we all know and perceive. There's a lot of potential for new growth as enterprises and SMBs convert to A2P from other channels. So having that visibility and control is key. Second is automation and timely decision making. The goal here is automate everything. There are many moving parts in here, and you need to strive towards complete automation, which cuts down on the time spent, and at the same time enabling your staff to make informed decisions because you're able to automate pretty much most, if not all, aspects of the operation. So automation and the timely decision making is the second part. And the third one is using the right tools. So using the right tools, and especially if you're using familiar tools, especially if you have a unified solution with voice and SMS, which certainly cuts down on time, cost, and can also help you roll out services faster. So we looked at the overall market and the trends, looked at the challenges. These are some of the key aspects of succeeding. What are the factors driving the success? Next, we want to take a look at some of the recent feedback. When it comes to price list and invoice management, we here at TOMIA have been doing this for many years. So we take some of the things for granted. We were at the GSE forum, the recent one in Athens about 2 months ago, and we participated in a panel discussion around this topic on price list management and voice management and so on. And we realized that things that we take for granted are not actually available or may not be available in the market. So and that's the whole reason for jumping on a webinar like this to put out to the MEF community members what's available, what can be done, and what they should be focusing on, especially on the A2P SMS side of the things. So things that we noted coming from a GSE feedback perspective: lack of automation. Many see investment in automation as high cost with little correlation to ROI. Lack of automation. Sorry, was there a question there, James?
No, there wasn't a question. It's just the air pressure just closed my door behind me. So the door was didn't have a question. It just closed automatically.
No, not a problem. So lack of automation leads to many human errors, right? So in the problematic price list are common in systems without automated solutions. So not all vendors are able to tackle things like OBRs, which is the origin-based pricing and rating. And manual intervention is still prevalent in many systems. So these were sort of our takeaways. What does this mean, right? So all of this results in one, missed cost saving opportunities or reduction in OPEX. And secondly, it also reduces confidence from your partners as they engage with you. So that said, now I want to hand it over to Harry to take us through the crux of the actual issue, the anatomy of price list management. What are the key things that you need to be watch out for and tackle as you move forward in this journey? So over to you there, Harry.
Thanks, Jeevithan. I jumped ahead a little bit just to share the next slide, but I'm excited to finally talk about the price list anatomy that Jeevithan was referring to before. But before we even get started on that, we want to talk about two main things. First, we want to answer the question, what is a price list? And then we're going to discuss how a price list is exchanged, just to set the stage a little bit for all the topics that are coming. When we're talking about price lists, you'll see on the screen here, at least on the bottom side of the screen, we have this, what looks a lot like a table. And that's actually because most price lists are sent and received in tables in Excel files. So you'll see contents similar to this, where you have the mobile network, the MCC MNC, which is the mobile country code, mobile network code, the origin contents in the cases where the operator is trying to send their origin information. You'll see the rates, and then you also see the validity date, which could also be called the start date, which could also be called the begin date, which could also be called the effective date, which is a huge problem, as you can see, and we'll talk about when it comes to price list contents. Price list contents, price lists themselves, these are the main documents exchanged. Now, James was prefacing a little bit earlier about how important it is in the price list management world, in the SMS and voice world, for operators who are trying to sell their traffic to actually to convey and articulate what their prices are. Right, so these are the main documents. They're usually sent in the form of Excel files, sent back and forth between different operators. And the contents you see here are not everything. We're showing some of the important ones that we're going to be discussing later, but you'll also see rounding rules in many price lists. You'll see actual origin set names, not just the origins or settlement origins. You'll see the origin codes, and so on. And these are usually contained in either one sheet or multiple sheets. This is something we're also going to be discussing as we move forward.
So Harry, there is no global standard for price lists, whether it's A2P or voice.
I really wish there were. There are attempts to standardize. There are different systems, business platforms where we ingest and standardize the forms ourselves, but no, there's no consensus between all of the different operators in the world on what the standard formatting is, even today.
That's a real gap. Hey,
yeah.
Who knows? Meth. it's a huge issue, but it's so important. And we haven't even mentioned the currency either, because the rate is good, but hey, what currency is it as well?
Very good point. Very good point. Yes, so currency is a nightmare as well. James, this is going to give you some flashbacks here.
Oh, here we go. We had a really good prep call before this webinar a week ago now. Time flies. And I'm going to be talking about a horrible flashback to when I was actually doing this myself many years ago. But anyway, we'll get to that quickly. Go for it, Harry.
As I talk, it'll come. So when we're talking about the practices of price list exchange, the way it usually happens in both the voice and the SMS world, it's more popular in the voice world to send price lists once a month. But usually what will happen is either weekly or monthly, an operator is going to send their price list, which is the intention of what prices they're going to share with all of their prospective partners at the beginning of the month. And then they'll also receive that many price lists. So usually an operator might send about 300 price lists and they'll receive 500 price lists. But that number is going to increase depending on the practices of their partners. So if their partners might send their price lists weekly, they can expect 4 times as many price lists from that specific partner than compared to other partners. So you can easily get to 600, 1,000, 2,000 different documents being exchanged back and forth between you and your partners every single month. This happens to create this very interesting phenomenon. James probably remembers that at the beginning of every month, or 7 to 8 days before the beginning of every month, every single carrier is in a rush to get their price list out into that 1 to 2 day window, because there's something known as an advanced notice period. If there are ever any rate changes or MCC MNC changes or dial code changes in the price list, people need to telegraph ahead of time, so that the carriers on the opposite side, who might be expecting a rate increase or might not be knowing about the rate increase, can make appropriate changes to their routing.
Yeah, so Harry, what Harry's referring to is many years ago, I had the dubious pleasure of having a role which meant I managed the P2P reach lists for a rather large messaging hub, a global messaging hub. And I experienced firsthand the joys, or not so joyful thing, of dealing with so-called +1, so Americas, non+1. And then you had USD, you had Euro, you had Singapore dollar as well, SGD. I had 4 or 5 currencies, +1, non+1, then the hundreds of suppliers updating all at once. So yes, I truly appreciated the benefits of something out there to help automate this. But I have to say, you still did need a little bit of a human oversight ability in there as well, because as we'll be talking about, even the tiniest little error can result in some serious impact.
Oh yeah, we'll get there. Human touch is always necessary in these cases. So speaking of that, James brought up a great point about how automation is such a key player in making life easier, because there is an overwhelming flood of information, not just for the person sending the price list out to interpret, but the person receiving the price list as well. That's where many systems such as IXLink come in, where they can help manage this to stifle some of that noise. So if you look at a system that has a automated process to receive and send price lists compared to one that may be doing all of that work manually, and when we talk about manually, we're talking about actually, we were saying that price lists are contained within Excel files. Those Excel files are often exchanged via email, which is not the most secure way to transfer documents, but it's also the standard of how people communicate today. Now, one of the problems with emails is people have to read them. So if you're manually processing and loading these price lists into your system yourself, there are going to be delay times of hours or even days by the time the person actually gets to see the email. Even worse are those cases where people don't see the emails on weekends. So maybe it's a Friday night, they're content with what they saw over the week, they received the price list, that price list seemed to be okay, but little did they know that price list had an error, and their partner wanted to send and actually lower the rate that they were initially telegraphing over to their partner carrier. Because the price list has already been received and completed, the person who went home for the weekend doesn't realize that they actually have a rate opportunity that they can capitalize on, but they won't see it until the Monday morning. So having an automated system gives you a great opportunity to automatically process those price lists without even seeing them, having them load within 30 seconds to maybe 5 minutes, as opposed to an hour, a day, or an entire weekend.
Harry, it's a great point, and it's and unfortunately, I've got to say this, but of course, there are some fantastic, great quality players in the world of A2P business messaging, but unfortunately as well, there are many not so, let's say, suboptimal players in business messaging who will absolutely exploit what you've just explained. So that Friday evening to Monday, wherever you might be in the world, typically it's Friday to Monday, the weekend, Saturday and Sunday is exploited, and any little gap, any chink in that armor can be exploited to a huge degree, and companies can lose a lot of money if they get this wrong. And do not just manage pricing 24/7, 365, and not just a 9 a.m. Monday morning to 5 p.m. Friday evening scenario.
Oh yeah, both directions, right? You could be losing cost opportunities, or you could be getting really hosed by people who are trying to, I think in this industry we call it cherry picking.
Yes.
Yeah. So great point. And then to add to that point, the scary thing here is, while human touch is important, most of the errors we're seeing are actually human errors. So if you look at the table we provided here, we were just going through some of our data before this presentation, just to take a look at how humans are actually behaving when they're creating and generating these prices. And we noticed, actually, interestingly, that most of the errors made by humans are happening on a convenient Thursday, Friday, and Saturday period of their lives. I'm sure the creation and a drafting and proofreading of price lists is not their main focus for that day. So the human errors is a real effect. There's a dramatic increase of up to 4 to 5% or 35% overall between people who are fresh on a Monday morning and on a Saturday afternoon. That's where automation is critical and key.
Well, and Harry, just basic communication as well, and basic messages between colleagues, because I worked for another company in the world of business messaging. I just joined them, and brand new with a sales role, and asked a simple question to a sales colleague: could I just have the A2P SMS reach list with the prices, with the selling prices? No problem. Emailed it to me over, thought great, had a prospect more or less immediately, and I sent it over. But little did I know, because no one told me, but on the same Excel sheet, but further down, there was a gap, probably of 50, 60, 70 lines, but beneath were the hundreds and hundreds of lines of the actual cost base. And no one told me. No one told me. It wasn't even in a separate tab. It wasn't in anything. And luckily, that prospect, I knew them. They were absolutely fine about it. But you can just imagine what could have happened had that information got out to a wider market and wider audience. And that's just something so simple from someone simply not saying, James, check out a bit further down. Please note, please be aware, the costs are on that same Excel, so wipe them out before you send anything. So
that's where, communication.
Just even that little thing can cost a whole company. It really can. Yeah.
Oh yeah, communication. I would rewrite this entire slide right now. Just with communication is key. But in the cases, in the cases where we don't have communication, what does help are systems that do validate and verify the information in the price list. So when you have an automated system, it is very convenient for the system to read the contents of the sheet themselves, knows when information is missing, or knows when information does not look the way it's expected to look. So for instance, you're familiar with this with the advanced notice period. If they're not honoring the advanced notice period, you can either choose to automatically reject those also, or soft reject the price list and say, hey, we're taking this time, but there's a problem with this price list. Talk to your partner. Because again, like you were saying, we can't eliminate the human aspect, and we really don't want to, right? We really still need to actually have partnerships, social dynamics, communication. All these things are still very integral to the business world, but at the same time, we don't want to slow down because of fat finger mistakes, or because we have information 70 cells down that we weren't looking for. So if we look at this table here, this is just building on the information that we sliced a little bit earlier, showing that, we have, from the prices that we saw rejected, 30% of those were happening from Friday to Sunday. So not only are we getting a high rate of error in price lists, 30 or roughly 1/3 of the prices that are being errored aren't being recognized and observed or attended to until the following Monday. These errors can result in problems of accidental overcharging. That's terrifying in its own right, but also missing out on cost opportunities. But like we're saying, great verification systems that check for these problems help to mitigate these issues.
Harry, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I've got another example of a real situation I was in the middle of. And this was another company I was doing some work for, and I'm pleased to say I wasn't actually in the middle of this situation, but I was on the periphery. It wasn't my fault, honest. But this was over in Asia, and there was a customer, an enterprise client, had contacted us to say, hey, we've got a problem. Our route to country X is down, and there's an issue. And the support team, who was actually in Singapore at the time, and for Asia, they responded immediately. They helped the client. The client was absolutely grateful. Thank you very much. And this was, I think, on a Saturday. And then come Monday morning, let's just say there was a suboptimal situation because there was, let's say, a loss of a lot of money, because what had happened is the support person had rerouted, but to a route which was far more costly, had a higher price than the actual revenue they were getting from that client. And what happened is other players in the industry saw that exceedingly low price. This was over a weekend. They jumped on it and absolutely hammered that route with traffic.
Yeah. And at that point, what did they do? Did they file a dispute, or did they just soak it,
file big disputes and everything like that? But they unfortunately had to eat rather a large loss as well. Yeah. They had to, because it was a genuine mistake. So it was all trying to do the right thing, to look after your client, respond rapidly, but they just wasn't in that process, or there wasn't any automation in that process to say, oh, so we'll go and check what the selling price is to the clients, and oh, you can't use that route because the cost price is higher. There wasn't that in the process. So it just shows how important automation is, and it could have saved that company a big amount of money.
That's such a fantastic point. It also goes to show that we want to speed along, but we also want to slow down at the right points, and having the knowledge and expertise in the system to tell you what those points to slow down are is so crucial.
Can I just ask another question? We've got a question from Gene Pradas. I think you guys know Gene. He heads up business development for BTS. What advantages do you see in having the same platform? So you mentioned, Jeevithan, as well at the beginning, that your solution can manage the pricing for both voice and SMS. So what's the advantage of having that for voice and A2P services? And the application then of a firewall? You can see the question.
Yeah, I do see the question here. So certainly from an integrated or unified solution perspective, you're cutting down on training time, leveraging your voice resources as you transition through to messaging, as well as on the CapEx side as well. You don't need to install new hardware, new software, and so on. So there's a lot of benefit both on CapEx and OpEx side of the stuff as well. The other part of the question was on firewall. Firewall is, from where we sit on the stack, firewall sits outside of that. And firewall is treated separately from a voice versus SMS perspective. Unless you're talking about from a fraud detection perspective, there are solutions, including ours, which actually looks at fraud as a whole, including both SMS and voice.
Yeah, I think that's what Gene is getting at. Yeah.
So sounds good.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Just the interest of time, I think we're doing okay. Just Harry.
We're gonna move along. Yep. James, you're gonna love this slide. So here we have. Now here we have an example. Now we pulled
I've lost my hair already.
This is a chimera.
There's much to come. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a chimera of multiple price lists, but really the problem comes in from a person who might have been rushing on their Friday afternoon to get their prices updated and sent out to a prospective partner. What's happening here is many things, right? We're seeing some of the leftover highlighting formatting from maybe some row that they want to key in on. You can see that some of the rate formatting is that the actual format, the rate is different from one until the next, which is also copied over from the validity date. What that means here, or who knows what this means, but the intention seems to be that January or June 1st was the validity date, but the way, if you read the offer directly, literally, you're seeing it's actually January 6th that they're intending for the validity date. That's happening because, you have European formatting compared to US formatting for date timestamps. And then, we also have some weird inclusions of highlighting text here again as well. Oh, and then of course our favorite rows that are filtered, which of course makes it more difficult for many systems to load the price list in the order that they're intended to be loaded.
Harry, can I just ask, Jeevithan, why? Because this has been going on for years. Pricing has been around for decades, literally, in the world of voice and SMS. When it comes to validity, why doesn't anyone actually think about, hey, let's do 3 separate columns for day, month, and year? Because then you will never have those issues.
Wow, you just blew my mind right there, James.
It's like, why didn't anyone think about putting cheese in the crust on the outside crust of a pizza? And someone did.
Still more for me, James. I've been at this like 10 plus years, and honestly, that would make things so much simpler.
Yeah, but you have to look at standardization as a whole, right? And unfortunately, that has not a lot of success has been here, and I don't see that, to be frank, happening anytime soon. And partly, system like ours play a role on this as well, because we have sort of kept it more adaptive and be be flexible to address these changes as they come in. People who are using the platforms or using similar systems, not just ours, are coping with these changes, right? So this is partly that reason as well. Yeah.
It goes without saying that we do have systems that automatically handle these situations, right? You load a price list, you'll be able to notice that there are differences in dates, there are checks in line that make sure that things aren't 3 months older than the intended effective date. So this can all be caught, it can all be rejected, but the real insane part is that it's still happening today. But it's it's part of being a human being, and we have to recognize that in the business world. So
I wrote an article today. Unfortunately, we are imperfect, and that's what makes us human.
Every psychology article I've ever read has had that line somewhere. And that brings into what we were talking about. We've been talking about the importance of standardization. Wouldn't it be great if we had 3 columns instead of 1 column per date? Wouldn't it be great if every single effective date had the same column name, or the same number of tabs and same number of rows? That would be fantastic. But obviously there are things that we can fight for. There's some battles we can win, there's some battles that we can't. And when we're talking about standardization, what we're really striving for is winning the battles that are important. And some of the most important ones are getting rid of ambiguity. At the very least, when we're talking about price lists, we have to make sure that they're clear and the intentions of the price list are communicated to your partner. So we're going to be talking about 2 specific cases. We're talking about rest of the world. There's so many more. We're going to talk about rest of the world, and that's native to the origin concept. And then we're also going to be talking about the idea of trailing zeros later on. These lead to disputes, miscommunications, and James told the story about it before, about that weekend in which they had a very costly expense and he had to eat those costs. Disputes, delayed payments, unnecessary overhead. We want to avoid all those situations. That's where standardization would be great. And maybe, James, at some point we can talk about these standards at Math. Okay.
Yeah.
So
why not? We have a business SMS code of conduct. We could have we could perhaps put in there something, a recommended price list suggestion in there, perhaps commercial model suggestion. Who knows? Yeah.
Send that email. We'll talk. So we're going to move on to the example for the missing row. So we just want to go through a case of, for those who aren't familiar with origins, this is something, now James can tell the story better than I can. About 7 or 8 years ago, there's, I believe, a tariff in the EU region that was starting to be applied to specific cases of price lists. So in the case of one, if you're originating your price from one area or your traffic from one area, and it's terminating in, say, Georgia, in this case, it might cost more than it would cost in other areas. So the specific rows that we can look at here, we have gold EU and gold row. This is an example where, because of the tariff, they were charging, well, it would be the reverse. It'd be more expensive in EU. But the idea here is, because of the tariff, we had to charge different prices based on the originating country or the originating destination or the originating network. So these nuances and complexities have to be conveyed in price lists. Before, when we were living those happier, simpler times, you might expect 1 or 2 rows if you had time of day that they made things complicated too. But you might have expected 1 row to convey your rates. But with the inclusion of origins, now for each individual settlement origin, those are also called origin groups, origin zones. For each individual case of a settlement origin, you could see 15, 16 additional rows per network. And that's making these prices larger. It's making it more difficult to read. It's making these systems very unhappy if a system can be unhappy.
And then there's increasing instability in the world of internationally originated A2P SMS pricing, as more mobile operators, who are free to set their own prices, do change their prices, and fairly frequently. And that has destabilized the market. In the days of old, of which I'm mainly talking about, it was much easier, because you used to have a country-based price, a region, and then we actually even had, I remember at the time, a price to send an SMS anywhere in the world. One fixed price. Those days have gone. Yeah.
And that's the natural progression of the business, right? Everyone's trying to make more money because operation expenses are so expensive. So you have to find ways to optimize your revenue. And you can do that by finding more nuance in the way that you submit your prices. It's just a natural evolution, but we need systems that can handle it. Here's the second case we were alluding to. This is the missing or the trailing zeros case. The idea here is that most systems can handle this. If you have an automated system, they'll be able to catch the fact that 122.100 is not the same as 1221. There's a 100 times degree difference of the number 1 and 100, but because Excel naturally strips zeros at the end of a number cell, you're going to see a lot of cases where people are projecting or sending information, constants of prices with 1221 instead of 122100. So this is a trailing zero case. Systems can handle this. This is something that people need to know. But depending on your operator, you may not want to apply certain business rules. This is where manual business rules come in, because some operators actually intend for 1221 to mean 1221. So on a case-by-case basis, some systems, IXLink in particular, can actually re-add those zeros back in for some vendors, but not other vendors. So yeah, and again, comes back to this: communication is key. Being mindful of how you want your price list to be interpreted is crucial. Okay, so speaking of these manual interventions that these systems are performing, so price lists that come right into the system, come right out, no garbage in, no garbage out. You can usually see your price list completing an average time of 30 seconds to 5 minutes that we were saying before. That's a handoff from the time that the email is sent to your automated system to the time that's received by the receiving party member. That's 5 minutes, and and then you can move on with the rest of your life. But in the cases where manual interventions are required, that means there's an error in the price list itself. This also comes back to the case we're talking about weekends, where you might have sent a correct price list, which processed through a system, and then you had to come back and correct it again. Those times take more to complete. And in the cases where their adjustments are required, we're talking about the trailing zeros, putting those zeros back in there. Files are so large that you need to split them or recombine them. Cases where destination names don't follow the same vendor standards, or the currencies aren't converted properly for the carrier partner that you want to work with. In those cases, things take longer. The file has to be remade. That increases the processing time. So these are things that need to be considered, and reasons why we want to have standards in place. And for the sake of time, I'm going to move on to the next. We have not been sharing enough love for the invoicing world. We're talking a lot about price lists. We want to bring up some historical moments, we like to call them, moments in history that are forever ingrained in our memories. So in the invoicing world, where in the price list world, it's common to expect XML and Excel as the standard formatting. What we're looking for or expecting mostly when we're talking about invoices are electronic PDFs. Now, what does that mean? It depends on who you're talking to, apparently. An electronic PDF typically is a PDF that has been created electronically through a system's word processor or PowerPoint or something that's standardized electronically. What it can often mean is a scanned PDF by an actual human being from a coffee napkin with a stain on it. We do have some infamous instances where our systems were unable to process a document, or formerly in the past, because we saw this gigantic brown spot in the middle of the sheet, and we're like, this isn't an electronic document, is it? These are some of the crazy stories that we see in the invoicing world. That's what makes this also complicated. We have some cases where we have these hard lines right in the center of the document, so you have no idea, what to do, or the document is tilted vertically instead of horizontally. So this is so common in the invoicing world, and we just want to shed some light on why it's important for us to eventually move past this manual creation step and have systems create these files instead, build APIs on top of your price list generation and invoice generation, so that we can work together to avoid situations where we are missing hours, days, weeks of our lives trying to solve these disputes and price list disagreements. Now we're going to come back to our favorite topic on origin-based handling, and just really shine some light on the fact that not all solutions can handle origin-based handling. And the reasons are, like Jeevithan was saying earlier, the large amount of data. We talked about times 15. There are some cases where carriers will actually have a single origin zone for each one of their mobile country code, mobile network codes. So you could have 100 rows for that one network, and 100 different rates too. Yes, I see your face, James. This is real, it happens, and it makes it very difficult for even a complicated system to understand how to handle this case. So if we're looking to the table on the right, the easiest thing, what a lot of carriers do is they just say, you know what, we don't want to deal with origin at all. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the maximum rate here. And this is very common practice in which they'll look at the price. They'll say, okay, the safest way to handle this without handling origins is just take the maximum price. If you look at the maximum price here, it's almost 3 times as large as the lowest price sliced for traffic originating from the EU. So you're leaving almost 1/3 of your cost savings on the table by not actually reading origin files. This is why we keep on hammering why everyone's moving towards origin. People who speak in the language of origin are doing very well, but the operators who aren't quite there yet, they're not maximizing their profits. So origin zones, settlement origins, origin groups, I was alluding to this slightly before, no one knows the difference. There is no difference. Everyone has their own definitions of how they're grouping and combining their origin sets, similar to how everyone groups and combines their, in the voice world, we had destinations, if you recall, James, people were grouping and calling destinations what they were. It just depended on the carrier. Here with origins, we were saying before, we have that case where for each MCC MNC, you were seeing a different code. And then for each single code, you created an individual group, not a settlement origin, which is its own thing, but an individual group. So when everyone's talking with all of this jargon and this language and this telco communication, oftentimes no one really understands what to do the first time the price list is loaded, and that's the most dangerous time. So it helps to have a system that helps guide users on what the correct standards are and guides them along on making sure that they can process their price list in the format that other people are expecting to receive. So here we're going to jump to the additional complexity. So because we've been talking so much about A2P and P2P today, we also want to mention RCS and the complexities related to generating RCS price lists. Now, this does happen, and there are many opportunities and complexities related to it. Some of the complexities, of course, include just the different third parties, the Googles and the MAP providers that you have to work with in order to generate and send and receive your price list. But then you also have to consider the different rating methods that aren't necessarily native to a P2P or A2P price list today. So these include session-based rating, active user-based rating, RCS, and single messages. These are things you have to consider as well, but the benefits are tremendous because, as James knows, RCS is incredibly more beneficial in terms of some of the features it provides: additional security, verified messaging, additional analytics. These are things operators want to have, but we still have to work on the standards to get there.
So one comment in there, right? So and as we see more operators utilizing RCS, it looks like it's a reemergence of RCS now for them to compete against the OTT. So picking the right solution is the key. So definitely the opportunities outweighs the complexities, but being able to tackle these and being able to offer what I guess MEF has coined the term conversational commerce is the key part.
Jeevithan, you'll be able to ask Google a question because I'm moderating the opening panel at Messaging and SMS World next Monday morning, and all about rich messaging. So
we'll be there. We are actually integrated with Google as well as we speak. So we've done that step. But yeah, happy to.
If you've got any questions, you can ask on the spot right there. No problem.
Excellent, excellent. So I guess, Harry, you're going to head over to the best practices again. Just in the interest of time, let's keep a time check, please.
Yeah, no problem. We've got 7 minutes left.
Oh yeah. So best practices that you've been talking about. You know, we're going to brush very briefly through the receipts end of automated system. What we're looking at here, specifically, I want to highlight the benefits of an automated system in terms of receipt and distribution. You get efficiency, speed, automation, control. You get to sleep better at night, and you get reduced costs. If you know some of the steps we laid out, this is part of our process. We go through all of these steps whenever our price lists are loaded. We make sure that we properly map and convert the files through the input adapter. So every single operator has an adapter with their partner, and that is helping to facilitate all of the price list loads. Then we go through validation, reconciliation steps. We enforce business rules. So we're talking about the trailing zeros, whether or not for some vendors we want to apply those trailing zeros, or for others we don't, we want to reinsert them. Those are some of the business rules. We clone and split files where necessary. Those are the manual steps. Then we perform our MCC mapping and analysis. We haven't talked about analysis. Someday, James, we have to talk about analysis, but that's one of the most complicating.
We can bring this discussion into the real world event, because I've been here 2.5 years at MEF, and this is the first time any company, and I've moderated a load of these webinars, we've ever talked about this. So it's a topic that needs to be talked about. We can do it in the real world as well. It's
integral to SMS. So yeah, you and me, we're going to get to this.
We'll be happy to participate. Definitely, James. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Conversions back into the output file, and then sending it downstream to your system. So all of this happens to price lists, and then something very similar happens to invoices. The goals here are a little different. We want to focus on accuracy, assurance, automation, keeping costs down. Again, we're going through conversion steps, validation steps. We want to enforce business rules because every single operator has their own specific instructions. Perform the conversion again, bring it back down to the downstream system. So that's those are the systems we're talking about. I'm going to hang this one back to you, Jeevithan.
Okay, thank you, Harry. So now, in terms of, let's wrap this up. What we see from the takeaways out of this, when you're looking at benefits of automating price management and also your invoices. If you can advance to the next slide, please. You can put this into 3 buckets here. Start with the cost control. That's primary, right? So we do see having the right tool can give you the quicker access to lower termination rates and better visibility here. And also the ability to streamline your settlement and dispute management as well, leading to pretty much 100% reduction in overcharges. So having a really good tight on your cost control. Second bucket is the operational efficiency. So significant reduction in errors, reduced manual interventions, and as we were answering the question there for earlier on the chat there, when you have a unified solution, you can make significant reduction in your capex and your opex costs as well. And then these numbers are actually coming from some of the studies that we have done with our customer base. And then the last but not least is the revenue increase, right? So with an automated system, you have the ability to go and integrate with multiple partners, get a better rate, and have the ability to optimize your routing options and routing solutions as well. So which definitely leads to increased revenue and increased margins as well. And then to wrap things up here, so we do have a platform called IX Link, which is used by 4,000 plus members in terms of exchanging price list and invoices. We process roughly about 500,000 of these price lists and invoices on a yearly basis. So you can see the amount of things that are flowing through an environment like ours. There are other platforms available as well. So anybody who's looking at going further down from an A2P market offer perspective, you should definitely have your homework done. So what are the key takeaways? Again, just to wrap this up here. One is the process automation. It is key to overcoming complexities. It improves your time to market, eliminates errors, and drives efficiency. And then having the right platform can drive your revenues and margins.
One really important question. Not every operator mobile operators tend to be larger, and even the smallest have thousands of subscribers. But if you are starting out in the world of business messaging, let's say the three of us put together, we started off our own business messaging company, we entered the world of A2P. Could we access this access IX Link cost effectively? Is it also aimed at smaller and medium-sized players, or is it really more for the larger players with big transaction volume?
That is a very good question. It is aimed for operators of all sizes. So we do have the tier zeros, right? So the top end all the way to tier 4, tier 5, and lower, smaller operators as well.
Perfect.
It is a pay as you grow model, so you pay for what you use. So it does fit that small to large size as well.
That's fantastic. So do you know what? We are a couple of minutes away from the close. We don't have any outstanding questions. And all that remains for me to do is to thank both of you. Thank you, Jeevithan. Thanks, Harry. I look forward to seeing you again in person, Jeevithan, next week. And Harry, we will meet one day in person as well.
Hopefully, yeah.
And yeah, it'll be absolutely fantastic. And thanks for bringing this topic to the table. As I said, it's something brand new, certainly for MEF, brand new for me during my time here at MEF. And it needs to be reinforced because these things are so easily assumed. You just think, yeah, no problem at all. It's done, easy peasy. It's not. It really isn't easy. And I think anyone out there who's created their own business messaging company or their own voice wholesaler, whatever it might be, will know that one of the hardest and potentially also the most rewarding in many ways key hire is a great routing and rating manager. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, routing and rating is the product. That is the product at the end of the day. So it's not just something you've got to do, it's the thing that makes you the money. So you need to do it well. So thank you very much, TOMIA. Appreciate you sponsoring this webinar. Great to have you as a member of the MEF community, and wherever you may be, enjoy the rest of your day. And if you're watching this recorded, please do join us for a real MEF event sometime as well in person. So thank you very much all.
Thank you for having us. And Harry, if you don't mind, just advance to the next slide. Our contact details are there as well. So anybody is interested, you can reach out.
Fantastic. So very easy, marketing@tomiaglobal.com. There we go. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.